You've probably already noticed this if you've been paying even the slightest bit of attention to NASCAR's street race in Chicago, which is yet to be announced, but is very close to being announced, as The Athletic pointed out a couple of days ago. But the biggest thing that I've noticed, and it's unavoidable, is the vast amount of bad takes. Already, the Chicago street race and its legacy is bad takes on the internet. And today I saw the worst take that I have seen yet, and unsurprisingly, it came from a politician. Now, this was dug up by our pal Adam Stern. It was originally said in the Chicago Sun-Times by Chicago alderman, no, not Daryl Alderman, get your NHRA, get your brain out of the NHRA, Chicago alderman Brian Hopkins. And if you don't know what an alderman is, because I didn't, it is an elected member of the municipal council in Chicago. Now, why they just don't call Brian Hopkins, who is the guy who gave this quote, a councilman, like Councilman Hopkins, not Alderman Hopkins, I don't know. But this is what he said about the Chicago street race in the Chicago Sun-Times, because this is one of the most out-of-touch things I've ever heard anyone say ever about anything. So, Brian says, I know the people behind it are professionals. He's referring to NASCAR. They're not like renegade criminals out there tearing up Whacker Drive. Whacker Drive. Really? But it feeds into the whole culture and adds a level of hypocrisy to our efforts to crack down on illegal street racing. We would be saying, this is what we like. These guys are going to do it because they're professionals, but the unprofessional guys, we're going to try to send them to jail for doing basically the same thing. Now, I'm just saying, I'm just going to say it. When I think of crime in Chicago, I don't think of street racing. That is not the first thing in my head, I have to say. I'm just going to be real honest here. Real honest. Now, if you didn't already know, most politicians have absolutely no idea what they're talking about 95% of the time. This is a great case in point. Because as far as I know, any street race, professional street race, in this country or across the world, has not led to Fast and the Furious breaking out in the other 55 weeks of the year. That the professional street race is not happening. This is unbelievable. But it's not unbelievable, because the Boston Grand Prix happened. And if you don't remember, the IndyCar Boston Grand Prix, IndyCar was dead set. And it had nothing to do, of course, wink wink, that they went to Boston, the Boston Consulting Group, to tell them what they needed to do to take it to the top. But they decided, well, we need a race in Boston. So they got very far down the line, and then a lot of misinformed, uninformed people got very, very noisy in the political realm, and eventually they had to get rid of the Boston Grand Prix. And eventually, that Boston Grand Prix went, or the guy who was behind it, went to jail or was, arrested or fined heavily. He wasn't a very good dude, as it turns out. And it's unsurprising, it's on brand, but this is about as stupid as I've heard thus far. And there's been a lot of stupid. And by the way, that's going to be another stupid talking point throughout this entire thing, which is going to be Chicago and crime. Now, I've seen a lot of people, I think they're memeing, because every Chicago-based NASCAR post, there's always at least 5 guys in the comments saying, well, they better bring the bulletproof vests. And I think most of it's satire or people just being jerks. But I also think there are some people who are serious about it. And to the point where when they do officially announce this, I think NASCAR is going to actually have to address like the safety of this race from a competitor spectator standpoint. Now, obviously, Chicago puts on a lot of big events, right? However, we do live in current year, and it seems as though there's a lot of violence recently. And so when you take a new event to a city which has the track record, obviously, and just the general perception that violent things could happen, you're going to have to address that. So it may be a bad take, and God, I hope nothing ever happens at any race anywhere where people's lives are threatened by people with bad intentions. But I think there's enough people that are talking about this talking point already that I think NASCAR seriously will have to address that, which is definitely something interesting. Now, let's go back a little bit lighter, because that's kind of dark and scary, a dark and scary thought. The most annoying takes to me are like the staunch defenders of this street race that NASCAR is putting on. I call them the NASCAR contrarians. At one point they hated NASCAR when everybody loved NASCAR, and now they love NASCAR now that everybody hates NASCAR. They always take the unpopular opinion. It doesn't matter what it is. When everybody says, you know what, I kind of like Road America, and a street race I'm not really sure is going to be the best thing for NASCAR, they're like, oh, street race is going to be the best thing ever. You hear this all the time. And I think both ends of the spectrum are wrong. The people who say it's going to be the worst thing ever, they're wrong. And the people who say this is going to be the best thing ever, they're wrong. Here is what will actually happen. NASCAR apparently has a 3-year contract with the city of Chicago to do this race. Now, from what we know about street races, the most recent street race that has been put on in this country was the Nashville Grand Prix, if you don't count the Formula One race at Miami. That's essentially a permanent track built, on the Miami Dolphins Stadium. There's only a couple of roads that it crosses over. They do have to close roads, I guess, around the stadium, but I personally don't consider that a traditional street track. The track in Nashville, the Nashville Grand Prix, will not be profitable until year 4 of their contract. They have an initial 3-year contract. This year will be year 2. Next year will be year 3. And if they can get to year 4, they will be profitable. That's an IndyCar race, granted, in a city that's not Chicago. Obviously, Nashville is not Chicago, right? I can't imagine a situation in which, especially because NASCAR has not done a street course at the Cup Series level before, that this will not be one of the most expensive races, especially street racing wise, to put on. So it's got to last probably at least the first contract and maybe longer to turn a profit. Here's the other problem. Most street courses don't have staying power in cities that don't need them. In cities that do need them, like St. Pete, Long Beach, those cities were not like Chicago or Los Angeles or New York City. These were cities that were not as established and used the race, continue to use the race, to up the level of prestige in their cities. Will a NASCAR race do that for Chicago? In my opinion, no. Number one, the NASCAR fans don't like it. The core fan base of NASCAR is not going to be about this. The number one thing I hear from NASCAR fans when they go to any other racetrack that's not like Dover Downs or pretty much any NASCAR oval, right, is the thing that they can't see the whole track. I hear that when they go to road races. I hear that when they go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. They can't see the whole track. They don't like that. Well, I can tell you, I've been to, 3 or 4 street races this year. You cannot see the whole track, and you're lucky sometimes at some street tracks that you can see just maybe one corner. NASCAR fans won't like that. Traditionally, I would say NASCAR fans, not really city folk. probably don't want to go into a city and have to park if they don't want to, or if they don't have to. And it's not an oval, obviously. A street track is kind of associated as not being something of this country. So I don't think traditional NASCAR fans will like it. I do believe it will be a TV spectacle, at least for the first year, because it's going to be an absolute wreckfest, and AJ Allmendinger will win. The locals will be interested for the first, maybe the second year, but eventually they'll get bored of it. And I think those voices that will be noisy about the negatives associated with a street race will just get louder as time goes on, and there won't be enough glamour with a NASCAR race to keep people coming back year after year. And as the returns diminish, or as the politicians get shifted in and out, as the public maybe turns on this race, I don't see this having a long shelf life. But we will see. I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know all of them, and we'll see you in the next video.